A couple more things about the George Gammon video I
Yeah.
wanted to ask about. Right near the end, he kind of nonchalantly, at least in my opinion, talks about having 10% inflation for 5 years, like it's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
I don't see that as very
I,
likely.
yeah, and that's the kicker to his 50% drop is that you have this continuous inflation that doesn't end. Um, I don't see that. I don't
Yeah.
see that. I don't see that being the scenario taking place. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't. If it does play out where we have this inflation scenario that doesn't end and it keeps going, then I think George is absolutely 100% right
Yeah.
on
And
board.
mathematically, he's correct
I
if that happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the idea of what he is putting out there is correct if the theory of inflation doesn't end.
Yep.
I believe that it will end. I mean, and I think it's going to end very quickly and very shockingly to a lot of people. In the way that I see it, it's not like necessarily that inflation is going to end and everything kind of goes back to the way it was. Like that's not what I see happening. What I see happening is that the Federal Reserve has positioned themselves in a way that they are not taking on the idea that the supply chain is going to come and help them. Like they even said it back when they started to raise the interest rates, that they are going to look for help from the supply side of things. I mean, they straight up said it. And I'm like, why in the world would the supply side jump on board with the killing of the demand? Like, to me, the way I saw it, it was just like, okay, so we had this, huge imbalance, right? The supply versus demand imbalance. Supply fell, demand shot up with the stimulus packages. So now we have this huge supply demand imbalance. And if you have that, you're going to have prices increasing no matter what, right? So now what ended up happening is that they're trying to bring the demand down in line with the supply, right? So they want to
Mm-hmm.
balance this out. The only problem is that they were hoping to get help from the supply side, meaning that supply would want to try and manufacture, distribute, do all the other things that would, typically go on in a normal economy. But this isn't a normal economy. They're hurting the demand. So why would supply try to manufacture, distribute, and do all that other stuff into a killing of the demand, their actual customer?
Mm,
So I
right.
said it back then, it wasn't going to work. What you're going to find is that the supply and the demand are both going to fall together and the inflation won't go away, right? Until it reaches a bottom. Once it reaches that bottom, then they'll balance out and then you'll have growth and the dropping of interest rates and everything else that starts to take off from there. But until it reaches that equilibrium, you're going to have the continuation coming from the Federal Reserve exactly like we see it, higher interest rates for longer until that balance starts to take place.
Right.
And who knows how long that's going to happen. And then when you think about it, when it does start to turn around, the supply is going to be very limited out there. There's not going to
Exactly.
be a lot of it, right? And so the manufacturing, the distribution, all that other stuff, there's going to be so much room for growth. And that's really what they were looking for was growth.
Exactly.
They said that that was the problem. I mean, John Williams was talking about that back in 2018 in his
Mm.
speech of monetary policy for a low neutral interest rate world. They said that growth had fallen so dramatically around the world. And they had no idea on how it was that they were going to try and get this growth back. Well, guess what? When you take
Mm.
supply and demand down to the very bare minimum, now you got all kinds of room for growth, right?
That's
This is
awesome.
actually this is actually Austrian economics at play. They're trying to burn out all the debt undergrowth, right? They're
Hmm.
trying to kill off the zombie corporations. They're trying to get rid of the bad debt that's out there. Once you get rid of all this bad debt, these bad zombie corporations, all this, even zombie people for the most part who are debt saturated and can't really, advance themselves because they have, taken on so much debt. Once you wipe all this stuff out of there, then it's the green shoots that can grow,
Yep.
right? All of a sudden, you have all this room for
Yeah.
expansion. You have the zombie corporations who are taking the best resources and employment for uselessness because they're
Hmm.
not a viable company, and it's going to turn around and go back into viable companies, and we'll have something that can grow from that. So it's really like the Federal Reserve is actually using like the free market to fix all this crap, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't
I like
seem
it.
like it because there's so much manipulation in there, but if you allow the free market to kind of work its way in there and destroy some things, because that's really what needs to happen is like, you need some people to
Yeah. You need
basically
some pain.
fail,
You need some
you know,
pain.
you need some
Yeah.
pain, right?